I'm really excited to be back. It's been a while that we've recorded a podcast, so hello again.
November Greece was the last time.
I know, it's amazing. Now we're in South Africa, and it's the month of March 2026.
Cheers to you all.
Yes.
I noticed there's a slight different array
Background.
around us.
Also, I just wanted to give a little update. The reason that this has all happened is so exciting. We traveled to 3 very distinct places in the US to work bespoke with clients. That was incredible. And then we got to be in Costa Rica, which is where you grew up. Yeah, and it was amazing. And then we went to your family's place in the Caribbean. That was incredible. Set up a business there, and I just got to see that and experience all of that. And now we're here in South Africa, and I just feel full of very creative ideas. Today's conversation I'm super curious about because it's a new idea, and I want to develop it here with you in this conversation. Now we have some development already, but I really feel it's an important one. The reason it's important for you is to understand that when it comes to sex, when it comes to relationship, when it comes to intimacy, it's not like there's this one pill or one solution that's going to cascade through and solve everything. That's a very strange approach to this whole landscape. And so the other day I came up with this idea, like it's an actual erotic ecosystem. And so that's what I would love to talk about today.
Well, I love this because we had been going on to some other podcasts, and at one point someone was like, oh, it's everyone's teaching the same thing, but just under different names. And there are a lot of words that people will use similarly, but then when we dig into what those words mean, it becomes very apparent that they're thoughts, they're ideas, but these words don't mean just thoughts and ideas. They actually relate to the body, to the psyche, and very specific embodiment, very specific things that are going on and happening. And when you have, again, an ecosystem here, you have a different emergent result when you do each of them right. The second piece that made this was listening to, is it a book or a podcast?
It was an audiobook.
An audiobook.
Dan Sullivan and Joe Polish.
Exactly. Yeah. And he was talking about the industry disruption that he had, and he says it's like making a loaf of bread. If you leave the yeast out or one ingredient, it's not the same piece of bread.
So you need the whole piece.
And that's exactly the same thing here, because we are dealing with people, yes, in terms of sex, but we're also dealing with different attachment patterns. We're dealing with communication styles, and you need to have an understanding of all of those and how they play with each other to develop the kind of emotional maturity necessary to experience these higher states of pleasure, greater relationships, meeting the goals that you want, and having a lifestyle that actually, leaves positive impressions on each other so that you can enjoy your day-to-day life with your partner.
Well, I also think it's important because what I'm noticing is there is a current ecosystem. It's just a little mishmashed. And in the way that it's put together, if we look at it, it actually erodes our connection with our inborn erotic intelligence.
Yes.
We all have one, you have one. And if you're not sure what that is, just imagine for a moment, there is a part of you that knows what you need to feel deeply alive. And by that I mean turned on, alive, connected, curious, not only about sex, but really like this feeling of aliveness in the body. And erotic intelligence, from my understanding of what that whole thing means, it's not morally shaped. It's a primal intelligence that lives in us. It wasn't shaped by this later society.
So it's in the same way that you have an intelligence in terms of like eating food,
intuition,
or relationships, etc.
Yeah.
And these things can get skewed by the way that we've become conditioned. And I really liked when you mentioned that most people, when it comes to their erotic intelligence, nowadays, and this is something that I've also just seen with clients, they can't hear it, was one of the things you said.
Yeah.
The other one is they don't know what to do with it. And the other part that I've seen time and time again is that even if they do know what to do with it, or if it's telling them what to do with it, they're afraid of it.
Yes, so they're not feeling a confident, relaxed relationship with that part of themselves, which then, if we inadvertently suppress that, then we're going to always look externally for someone else to hold the wisdom or the guidance or the thing to do so that you can. Recently I overheard someone was asking, I think it was on the radio when we were in the Uber, and there was a young man who'd phoned into the radio station, and he really wanted to ask this girl out. and he had consulted ChatGPT. What is the best way for me to craft the perfect date for this girl? And I thought, wow, we've gotten there. We need to come back first to ourselves to feel, to sense, to drop in.
Well, the part that I heard too was a woman then asking, how does she choose a boyfriend in a relationship?
Yeah, it was a bit scary. So we've gone that far, but what we were wanting to do in this episode is to show you that within you is an erotic intelligence. You are immersed in an ecosystem that either allows it to thrive or actually represses it. And what we hope by the end of this episode is that you feel like really confident and know exactly what to do to create a really thriving environment.
Another way to look at this is that we continually see, specifically in the sexual wellness industry, whose top sellers are pornography and sex toys, is an outsourcing of the erotic, an outsourcing of what is a turn on, meaning that as opposed to discovering how your own body works, as opposed to then solving things and figuring out how you and your partner work together, you're being taught that no, a person on the receiving end, giving or the giving side of things, or a man and a woman, they are opposites, and so there is no real bridging that other than learning to do turn taking involving toys. And so then again, you're not like really directly learning like your partner's body. You always have this thing that's kind of in between the two of you. Or the other one is don't do monogamy. You have to do the kind of the latest trend. It's about polyamory or this and that. And there's nothing inherently wrong with these things, but if these solutions don't help you be more connected to yourself or your partner, that's then where we step in and go, well, that's not actually helpful.
Well, okay, so part of the ecosystem that we need to first unpack is a lot of professionals that we have met. They have such good intention. They really want to help people. And they're really devoted to their particular way of helping people. And yet, one of those ways often is connected to an endorsement. So they have, they're invested in you believing all the reasons why you should get this particular toy because they make money from selling you that toy. And I don't think that that's okay. I think what happens there, it's not a full service to the actual person in front of you. And maybe that toy is good for some people. I just don't think it's good for everybody. And so there is this way in which we're not serving your erotic intelligence. We're profiting off of it in the lack of connection to it, and that you are seeking professionals. And we want you to seek professionals, but we also want you to be smart and really be able to discern the difference.
Well, when we spoke to Lauren Davis, an amazing osteopath, if you definitely want to know anything around life after childbirth, this is one of the things that she really speaks on. But the other part was both her and her husband, Craig, both doctors of osteopathy, were speaking around how vibrators are great to awaken the body if you have anorgasmia or simply like you've been shut off. But going beyond that, though, does not have the same positive effects in the long run. So again, how can we start to actually learn and understand the body as a system of pleasure is something that unfortunately we don't have too much access to. And I don't believe that those that are just following endorsements are doing it just because of the money. They genuinely believe like these products, this is what the science supposedly says is the right thing. And
as I said, there's an indoctrination. So I want to speak to that. I want to be the party pooper in the current party.
Well, I want to give a little perspective on where it comes from, though.
I understand. I said they have benevolent intent. However, there is an investment. So if they are challenged saying, this isn't right for everyone, they bristle up instead of going, no, you're right, it's not right for everyone. It's right for some. So there's an attachment to that. But why I'm bringing this up, I don't even care about that. Why I'm bringing this up is I want to point out that there's the ecosystem that we're currently erotically marinating in is removing us away from our erotic intelligence. And that means, as Aaron, you were pointing out, the most currently available education on sex is porn. Then you have all this...
Which is a performance for the camera.
Yeah, then you have...
Not for the sensation of the body.
Sex education that's more like reproductive education. And then you have a lot of people with trauma in this arena that aren't getting the correct and good help.
Also, the pleasure education that we do have stems from Masters and Johnson's predominantly. So we're talking like 60s and 70s. And that hasn't really been updated so much. And that whole era is really chock full of ideologies. And so this isn't about, oh, well, men should be anti-vibrators or women should be for them. This isn't an ideology. This is simply how can we be connected to our body and let the feeling of pleasure guide us towards more.
Yeah.
And that's a big piece of the erotic intelligence.
And this episode it's not an episode against vibrators.
No.
But we keep bringing it up.
But it's the big industry leader, and so
Yes.
is the one in terms of porn.
Yeah.
And I think the third one is actually sex therapists. And there are a group of growing sex therapists, however, that are taking this more somatic approach, which is how do we get people connected to their bodies and connected to each other?
Yes, what I'm saying is the elements do exist. They don't coexist.
Yeah.
So we have, on one hand, some really great trauma therapy, but they rarely want to really look at sexuality and pleasure. It's really strange because I have a lot of students who come from that industry and they come to me specifically because there's a missing link on the conversation, even though they're assisting with trauma in this area.
I mean, here are the facts. The numbers are around 40% of women in the world have some form of declared sexual dysfunction, and 30% of men. So whatever the education is that's out there in the zeitgeist and the overall culture, that's the status that we have, and then that number's always kind of has a little asterisk next to it, which is these are the ones that have reported about it.
Yes.
And that doesn't even count those who are dealing with numbness, who then are just not feeling what's going on. And it also doesn't even address the whole side of, well, what about being able to optimize? Because at the end of the day, we also, with our clients and our community, it's not about having mediocrity. It's not about just resolving dysfunction. And the thing that you always say, which is so important, this isn't about just being a survivor of whatever ills have happened to you in your life or pains that you have. It's about the ability to thrive. And each of you have that deep potential to truly thrive.
Yes, so I'm going to keep going with the toxic ecosystem.
Yep.
So then we also have, I named the porn industry, I named the sex therapy industry and the toys, and then I named the sex trauma abuse things. But then we have also culture, we have religion, and all of what that does to the psyche around guilt, shame, around the body, around this act that supposedly is encouraged upon marriage as a sacred union, but prior to that is, considered sinful. But that whole environment, and then however you're grown up, I don't know what your relationship with sex that your parents had or your siblings had, but this influences us a lot. And so very few people are brought up with the kind of ecosystem that allows you to maintain erotic innocence and then start to cultivate maturity and curiosity around this particular topic. So even the most savvy people, I watched a Joe Rogan episode once where he had a female doctor on talking about sex research, and he couldn't stop giggling and kind of poking fun. And I know that's our current attitude, and it's good to have jokes and it's good to have fun, but this topic is so primal to a thriving life that it deserves an actual deep investigation and to be held with reverence and respect. And so I want to bring that into our conversation, not just point out all that's not working, but actually start to show you what are the elements that create a really healthy, thriving, vibrant ecosystem, and that those elements are not that far away from you.
So, well, what are some of the ways that you see this negative ecosystem showing up in people's lives?
The majority of the way I see it, just because of the type of clients I attract, is either women who've had some form of abuse or trauma in their life, and then they're on a process of reclamation, but it's just they're struggling with it, partly because there might be body issues, partly because there might be a lot of shame, and maybe a lot of fear, and maybe just not even knowing that it's possible to have something to feel good and pleasant and easeful.
So I guess something that you listening could identify with is if you're having negative emotions just around even the topic of sex, that could be fear, anger, anxiety, shame, blame around it, or just simple boredom, or like, I don't feel anything.
I don't want to talk about this.
These are all some different signs that could be coming up. I think another one I see a lot is that you then just simply have sex and don't put any meaning to it.
Yeah, so there's the healing aspect. Then often what I see with trauma is you'll have a repressed aspect where people go into frigidity and no sex and being
Sounds
asexual.
like a sex anorexia.
Yeah, they're just, a lot of denial there. Or they go into the nihilistic expression of the trauma where they don't care. They will go and have sex with a ton of different people, maybe unsafe. Like they'll just really not care because they're not feeling much and they're trying to do something. Maybe what happened to them, they don't even know how to deal with it other than becoming sexually aggressive themselves. So there's a whole spectrum available there, but neither of those extreme ends of the spectrum, I would say, is a healthy erotic expression. I think that they're a call out for help.
And the vast majority are sort of pendulating between the two. Depending how far you swing on that pendulum depends on each individual.
Yeah.
It might just be, for the typical guy, like, I'm watching porn. I'm not going to even touch myself at all or interact with someone. Or I'm not going to touch myself because if I do that, then I'm going to really want a relationship. That's going to lead me to a bad toxic relationship versus, now I'm feeling sexual pleasure and I'm just going to date like a series of assholes.
Yes, exactly. So then there's also the piece here where we need to look at relational imprints that we've had, because oftentimes our very first sexual experience can leave what I call the erotic fingerprint. The good thing though with the erotic fingerprint is that it's changeable, unlike a fingerprint itself. So,
Tell me a little more about the erotic fingerprint.
Well, the erotic fingerprint, if you think about a first time experience, let's just think about it in terms of a piece of food that's kind of foreign and exotic. And the first time you experience, you either love it or you hate it because it's foreign, it's exotic, you're like, wow. I was like that with the passion fruit.
Okay.
It was weird. And it was already weird and wrinkly. And then you cut it open, it looks like guts. And I'm like, how is anyone eating this?
So it looks like a scrotum on the outside when it wrinkles.
Like, yeah.
That means it's good though, actually.
That's when it's ready. And then you break it open and it's like these guts inside. And you're like, ew, like,
I had a friend describe it as snot fruit.
Yeah, it's just weird. But then I tasted it and I was immediately madly in love with it. And so I had this imprint of this fruit, although it looked funny and it, all those things against it.
So the next time you
became a favorite.
So the next time you see a weird fruit, you're likely to
a little
go
bit
ahead
more
and try it a little.
Experimental.
Whereas if you had been like, ugh,
and I don't think it's a taste for everyone. Has a sour side.
But if you hadn't liked it though, then you'd have the
imprint,
the imprint or the fingerprint of, okay, something's foreign is not good, so I'm just going to stick to what I know.
So erotic fingerprint can be very specific. Say a particular song was playing, or it was day, or it was night, or it was gentle, or it was rough, or there's all of these different elements. It kind of sets in as these are the conditions for which I need to be sexual almost every time from that moment forward. It's not true, but it often gets set that way.
And a lot of people's first sexual experience a lot of times isn't so great.
Yeah. So hopefully your first sexual experience is with yourself, and that can be great. But with another person, yes, often it's not, but it could be. And I've definitely helped some younger people who were old enough to make a choice. They were sort of late bloomers in the sexual world, but still young. So say like 18, 19, 20 in that time. And they're like, I have this disease called virginity. And I was like, it's not a disease, it's a gift. And you can literally set the tone for the rest of your life on how you design this experience. Would you like to do that? Absolutely. And every single one of them was so grateful because they had an extraordinary first experience and it was co-created with themselves and the partner.
Well, didn't you and Dr. Abrams also have a conversation that you noticed that women who had enjoyed self-pleasure, like with themselves first, actually then had different kind of emergent results later on in their sex life?
Yes, she and I, and this is just more anecdotal because I was asking a lot of other women just randomly, did you self-pleasure when you were a kid or not? And how sex now? And both of us had found that the majority of people who had self-pleasured young had way more access to a range of different types of orgasm more easily than those who started a lot later.
Yeah. Well, we'll get in a little bit more on the how in the member side, but your own self-pleasure practice is something that is important. And I think one of the key things that I want to leave here on this side of the podcast is knowing that if you did have a negative first impression or your fingerprint isn't anything less than optimal, this can be changed.
Yes.
You can change this. And it can happen rather quickly. It's sort of like when you first start to ride a bicycle, you're like, this is an awkward thing. Who would ever want to transport themselves on it? You always fall off, skin your knee, like bang your head.
I went straight into the garage head first.
That's an interesting metaphor to bring into. So if your first sexual experience drove you right into the garage, then know that, we have a clinically tested methodology that took people that are having a great sex life, bad sex life, that brings them into a state of actually truly enjoying it, having more
Mutual
sexual
pleasure.
satisfaction, feeling more closeness, as you said, mutual pleasure for women, higher frequency of orgasms, guys lasting longer, better communication before, during, and after sex. It's incredible.
It sounds like nah. And yet there were the measurements.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's incredible. Before we go into the...
Well, we need to say what is an
I know.
ecosystem.
Before we go into that side, I'd love to just give you some of the elements of the erotic ecosystem that can really support you to access your own erotic intelligence. So kind of bring you back into contact with it so that you can trust it, be at ease with it, and actually get curious about it.
Well, before you mention those elements, I just want to say that, first of all, an ecosystem, it comes from biology and this term, and it's an understanding of it's living systems that are interdependent elements, you could say.
Yes.
So what that means by interdependence is that if you were to take out one of those elements, then you affect the entire system. And if you are to
Like
bring...
if there's no more sunshine.
If there's no more sunshine, yes, then
No more rain.
So if you change the environment, it's obviously going to change the life for the organisms. But if you change and remove organisms from an ecosystem, then an animal, for instance, I think it was by removing the wolves,
killing too many
them off,
wolves.
then there were more deers, which then ate more of the grass, that then caused erosion more or less on the rivers.
And baby trees.
Precisely.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's an ecosystem. Now, the beauty of it, though, is that when you bring all these things together, there are emergent qualities that would not happen without all of those pieces together. And so when we're talking about an erotic ecosystem, it's important to understand, okay, what type of factors are we dealing with here? We're dealing with, one, the relationship structure itself in terms of what's the attachment patterns?
Yes.
What are your shared values that are happening there that allow for a couple to thrive? And frankly, also just to be able to be aligned with your own values internally
This
helps
is for
you for
singles
yourself.
and partners. Yep.
Then we also you want to have and for us, when we talk about intimacy, we're not just speaking about roses and firelight and all that. That's great as well. Kisses can definitely be there. You can even have a box of chocolates. I know you like it over 70% dark. Or at 70s, the perfect one. But is not just a communication, but the impressions that we're leaving on each other. So again, we're painting something slightly different here than maybe what you've heard, because when we talk about impressions, this is every single time we interact, we are leaving impressions on each other. And we have a deeper cycle that we can get into later in terms of how do you create impressions that actually allow for more truth, responsibility, trust, celebration, and create a healthy relationship that's going to keep you living and heading towards those shared values. And then lastly, there needs to be mutual pleasure. And this mutual pleasure creates the fuel that positively conditions you to head towards the things that you want. Otherwise, a lot of this can just feel like homework.
Yeah, and the majority of people will say, there's a few lucky ones, they say, where they have great sex all of their lives. But the majority of people say, at a certain time with a person, within a certain time frame, or by a certain time of life, that these things diminish quite a bit. And they don't have to.
No.
So
we find that statistically, women that say that they just have low desire or don't like sex is haven't had positive experiences. And then in terms of, I mean, we see this all the times with couples as well, where a lot of times the guy will be like, no, our sex life is fine. Or sometimes even the woman will say they're fine. And then as they start speaking, they find out that one of them doesn't like it, or neither of them like it, or there's a whole lot of territory that even if they're having a great sex life, like anything else in life, you can have an even better one. In the same way that, sure, you're probably healthy and you're in shape to some extent, but then you get like a really great trainer and you're like, oh, wow, okay, my body can be this much stronger. I can actually tweak my diet and enjoy what I'm eating and feel this much more alive. So there is definite ways to be able to, again, move past just the mediocre and into the optimal.
Yeah, agreed. Well, one of the reasons I also had this thought about the erotic ecosystem is that we have launched the Embodied Love University. And prior to launching it, we were really excited about, I think you got it from the Gracies, the jiu-jitsu.
Yes, I was looking at the way that they moved their school from being always having to be in person and then how do you maintain the quality while at the same time allowing it to spread. And so they had these foundational videos that you needed to have to be able to defend yourself, and that would kind of bring you into
even if you
the
never
collective.
did more jiu-jitsu, if you just knew these basics, your life would improve. And so we applied that idea to the erotic, to your sex life, to your intimacy, to your relationship. And we're like, what would be 5 foundations, absolutely crucial, that every human being, if they knew this, we would raise humanity's bedroom IQ substantially. And so in the erotic portion, we'll go more deep into that, but if you could just tell us a few, like list off the titles at least of those 5. And the great thing is we are making those 5 foundations available and free to everyone. You just need an email address. So that's really exciting. So these 5 foundations, I feel...
And they're not just 5 videos, they're like mini courses on each one of them.
Yeah, but they're the foundational pillars to a healthy, thriving, erotic ecosystem. And I'm really claiming that particular word because I feel that as genuine and passionate as many people are, they haven't developed a methodology. They don't have a system. And there's many elements that are present but not cohesive. And that's what excites me so much about what we're doing is this cohesive, resonant, healthy, and very tested because we've been doing this for over 3 decades, I suppose now. And really have, we're so confident. We're like, yes, if we work with a person and they do these things, they will get those results. We've seen it over and over and over again. And I think one of the quotes back to the inspirational audiobook had to do with, I think Joe was saying like, well, you might know the words to a song, but if you don't know the tune, you don't know the rhythm, and you don't understand like how to actually perform that and be emotional in it and give it energy, then you really don't have that much to go with. And I thought, this feels like how a lot of people use sex. They learn a technique, but they're not sure how to cohesively bring that in with their emotions, with their kinky mind, with the health of their body, all of these elements. So I got very, very excited when I started to recognize, oh wow, we've actually created all the elements for a thriving, healthy erotic ecosystem, of which one of those is community, because we're going to have a lot of community, live community experiences online and also in person, which will really help the learning process. But what else is there in those 5 foundations?
So the 5 foundations are, first of all, understanding of anatomy, not as a system of reproduction, but as a system of pleasure.
Yes, and we have talked a lot about this in many episodes, so be sure to kind of scoot back and listen.
We've also spoken to this to other people in the field, other podcasters, and some people will use those fancy words, but we're talking about anatomy as you've never seen it before, and this actually flies counter to the standard definitions of what is happening anatomically when going into pleasure.
Sorry, I keep interrupting there. I'm just excited. I love the animation that you had you had created specifically to visually see what the heck are you talking about, because pleasure anatomy, approaching the genitals as a system of pleasure, is rather, you think it's, oh, that's obvious. It's not. All instructions everywhere is based on reproductive anatomy. So this is a huge foundation. Very excited to make it available to everybody. What else is there?
The next piece is the body mechanics
Ooh, yes,
of
super
suction
important.
sex, which is how do we activate and use this system of pleasure to actually create pleasure?
And what's phenomenal when you learn some of the most basic ways to create suction between two bodies, suddenly then mutual pleasure has much more possibility to arise and be experienced. And that's, I don't care how long people have studied, where they have studied, what they have learned. When we've coached them, they're just so grateful. They're like, I don't even have the words to explain the thing I just experienced doing this body mechanic thing.
And this makes mutual pleasure possible
Yes.
on the physical arousal level, because our bodies actually complement one another. And we found out that the orgasm gap has nothing to do with being heterosexual. It is a penetrative issue, because we have clients that are homosexual, intersex, whatever. It's about the giver-receiver interaction. We have issues around how to be an active receiver when it comes to penetration. But anyway, we'll get into more on
Unfortunately,
that.
yeah, penetration, the way people learn it, the first time they see it is usually through porn, which is friction sex. So we're talking about something completely different. We're talking about suction sex. So after body mechanics,
Then the next one is in terms of physiology, and this is something that you've introduced, which is the concept of relaxed arousal, which is way more than just a concept, but this is literally how your nervous system can go into these ecstatic states of pleasure, which is very different than your standard, oh, we're going to go have an orgasm and then we're going to have the drop off, and now we're in the refractory period and we're done.
honestly, there's nothing wrong with a quickie that has a peak and then a crash and you're done. Nothing wrong with that. However, there's just so much more available. It's a bit like the only thing available to eat is toast and butter. Every day, toast and butter, toast and butter. I'm like, well, do you want to throw a little cheese on that or a little peanut butter or something else?
Well, it's one of those things, because we have clients that, and people also just writing in, you have students as well, who they literally will be like, I am at a lack for words. And these are also professionals, like OBGYNs, doctors, etc., who are like, I'm at a lack for words to describe this completely other sensation that I've had, that maybe we could talk about as a cervical orgasm or a G-spot orgasm or an A-spot orgasm or whatever names, a full body orgasm or energetic orgasm, like comes in many different, these things come in all kinds of different flavors, versus the one orgasm that they had with their vibrator on their clitoris by external stimulation alone. And it's not like people quit liking to have that kind of orgasm. They're just like, oh my God, there's a variety out there. And the kind of industry leading statement that you're born with one way or another and that's what you have is completely unfounded. Because
no, it's not okay. I mean, many times, I thought it was weird.
Yeah, there's a sticker that fell off of our ring light right now.
I think you would have seen it. That's really weird. Maybe it's like very exciting.
It's all right. The scales are falling off of the eyes.
Arousal. So relaxed arousal is a thing. It's a profound experience. It's not only important in the bedroom, it's vital in the bedroom, but the more you can entrain your nervous system to understand it and live in that way, the healthier you will be in a world that's very, very invested in keeping you stressed.
Well, one of the times that came up for you is when when you kind of go, oh, someone else is describing relaxed arousal, was looking at Nicole Prouse's work, where she said the health benefits that she's finding that actually aid a person during sex is that time period before the quote unquote orgasm and then the refractory period.
Yeah.
So that's the part on relaxed arousal. And the interesting thing about that as well, I have to add too, is that there adds a certain emotional maturity or development that happens with that, because it is connecting your emotions, your heart, your feelings beyond just the impulse and drive to have, you know, this kind of quick orgasmic release that involves then the heart and as well as your partner's heart, and that's when things really start to deepen.
And for some of you, that might sound scary if you're not into intimacy. You're like, oh my God, I don't want to feel my heart or another person's heart. I just want to have great sex. Even if you're that type of person who's super avoidant, because I could say I went through a little phase of that at one point in my life, being deeply connected, having the capacity to induce that felt state of relaxed arousal can have a one night stand be like the most extraordinary thing you've ever had. And then you feel good about moving on and having, you know, blessing the person, moving on with your life. So it's not just for couples, but it's also within the single realm. And if you're not even sexual, but just sexual with yourself, relaxed arousal can start opening up your own landscape quite substantially.
I mean, having that connection is what you speak about actually allows you then to go and have an experience and not be dependent on the other person, but
Yes,
still being able to appreciate them and let the relationship form and mold itself to what it should be, whether it is something long-term or if it is for that one night.
All right.
Because you know you can have it for yourself.
And
All
then?
right. So, and then
Then
the fourth one is a really important piece that people also have a tendency to leave out, which is the part around mental arousal. And specifically how you can map out the erotic mind mapping of your psyche. So that way you're not just dealing with the physical arousal aspect, but you're also dealing with desire.
And I have to just pause here because a lot of times when we talk about this with professionals, they're like, yeah, I know what that is. But they don't actually know what that is, because when you make an automatic assumption based on a title and you don't know the content of the book, you may not actually know what's really going on. So the way in which we share the erotic mind mapping and the mental arousal piece, I really like it because what it does, it gives you permission to discover what you enjoy right here, right now. It also gives you permission to be more fluid in terms of experimenting within your own mind or within your partnership. And it also allows you to be a better lover to a partner if you do have a partner, and you start to understand, ooh, what is it that really makes them excited? What's the thing that lights them up? And then you can start to harvest a relationship, as you call it, long-term romance, where the spice is there and keeps growing with time rather than diminishing.
So very important piece, and similar to the whole anatomy as a system of pleasure. It's what are the psychological triggers as a system of pleasure as opposed to what to avoid. And the big piece in this is you learn to navigate a lot of times the negative emotions that can come around one's mental arousal parts where you are going to maybe judge or be judged for them.
I like also because how it's delivered on the Embodied Love University, it's a quiz, right?
Yes.
So you get to just, it's real quick. You just select this and that and that and this and this and this. And then boom, you get this reflection of what's possible as well as some invitations. So
You have to figure out what are those six mental arousal types. And you quickly discover that this doesn't have to do with dressing a certain way or even doing a particular action, but there's a certain psychological energy that you can then insert into your sexual experiences and you will not be bored in bed. Then the last one.
last foundation. It's not last in terms of least. It's just the last one we're listing right now.
This is definitely an important piece and one that a lot of people go, oh no, I've got this. I understand consent and self-regulation. I mean, I can look it up in Webster's dictionary and have a concept of what that means in my own mind. But it's one thing to know the words of a language because you can read them in a book. It is another thing to speak the language and live it in a culture. So what we do with consent and self-regulation is something called embodied consent. Now again, there's that word embodiment again. A lot of people throw that out there, but the key of it is how do you start to actually feel what your body wants and being able to act on it, to express it and read it in another, as well as having your partner read it from you. So that way you're not caught into the what do I think I should do?
Yeah.
What should I agree to or not? And then from there, being able to actually self-regulate in a way that you can always return to a place of stability as you are then growing in this evolution of your relationship.
Absolutely. So a word we hear so much in the industry is we need to create safety. And absolutely, the safety is like a given. But this goes a step further into enhancing a sense of security, a security within yourself, a security within your connection if you're partnered, and a security in terms of understanding what's available in the world if you are out there as a single person.
Safety, a lot of times, is the way it's spoken about, is everyone else or the environment needs to make things safe for me. And then you get caught into either finding a lot of times unsafe places or not being able to recognize when a place actually is safe. Versus security, it's an internal state. And that doesn't mean then that you ignore the environment around you, but you can accurately tell.
You actually read it better.
You can read, this is an environment that I'm safe in. This is an environment that I'm not safe in. I'm going to leave the unsafe environment versus stay in it. And I will stay in the safe environment and enjoy it because this is a good place, as opposed to running from it, which a lot of times can start happening when
the wires are crossed.
When the wires are crossed. And most importantly is having the security to know how to navigate any of those spaces.
Well, we gave you some extra time today.
Yeah, we did.
For this first half. But I'd love to jump into more, like, for those who are going to be in the erotic portion, how do we actually apply those foundations to start really cultivating that erotic ecosystem that then returns us deeply into activating and being with our own erotic intelligence?
Share some stories as well.
Yeah.
And yeah. But anyways, check out embodiedloveuniversity.com. Check out those foundational videos. Check out the community that's there and begin to educate yourself, because this is a big part of taking that first step to dive into this erotic ecosystem where your fingerprint can be reconditioned or just made if it's the first time in a positive way, as well as, what do you talk about? The erotic intelligence, how to activate that.
All right, well, let's just jump right in.
Let's go.
I really enjoyed I felt like I was on a merry-go-round. And then I was like hitting the first foundation, second, I don't know. I felt like I was going in this really cool journey with you. So when people then get access to the foundational videos, and what I want to establish here, which is really important, often we approach education as we want to learn something quick and get it over with. That's conceptual learning. What we're looking for, and why we called it Embodied Love University, is that you embody your learning. You have a gnosis of it, which is knowledge through direct experience. And that only happens over a period of time. So the concepts of the foundation doesn't mean you do it once and you never revisit it. The foundations is like always hydrating the body. For all of your life, your body will need hydration. Your body will always need sleep. Your body will always need exercise and good nutrition and really hot, yummy, delicious, fulfilling connection. So these are elements that don't go away. So the foundations here are essential now and for the rest of your life. So getting familiar with them, practicing them. Now, the place that I think people could stumble a little, and I see this because, again, we're very quick with trying to understand conceptually everything. We're not actually slowing down and letting it settle into our body and making it our own, is when a person only focuses in the area where they're already strong. They already I'm really good at that. And so they just keep doing, the bicep curl because it's easy, but the tricep exercise is torture.
I really can understand and see the anatomy and know how it works, but I don't have any attunement with my partner.
Yeah.
Or I can do all the things physically with their body, but I don't know how to actually help them deal with the fact that they're bored still in bed somehow.
Exactly. Or I'm really, really good at mental arousal, but I really don't know anything about consent, and so I'm not attuned, and my partner keeps getting upset.
What was the experience you had with this guy who was a self-proclaimed dom that you had?
Oh, it was terrible. I realized most doms out there are probably doms because they don't want feedback from me, and that's like horrified. But anyways, we won't go into that story. what I want to encourage you as the listener, as the participator of this landscape, is not only explore where you're strong. Yes, identify like, ooh, actually, these are my strengths in the erotic landscape. Yes. And let's enhance those even more. But more interestingly, for me anyways, is to always look at where am I weak or what have I not even known to pay attention to. You know, there's things in my life in the past where I just didn't know I had to pay attention to something, like say eating some green veggies or whatever.
Well, what ends up happening is that when you, sure, focus on the thing that you're good at, become exceptional at it, and then when you feel that you've reached a certain kind of like stagnation or limit to that, check out some of the other chinks that might be there. Because when you then up those, all of a sudden that thing that you were excellent at, you're like, whoa, now there's a whole new ceiling. Because if you only focus on one of the elements in any ecosystem, then the rest of the ecosystem suffers and doesn't reach its true full potential.
Well, think about, again, we use a dance analogy a lot because I am a dancer. But think about a dancer who's really technically proficient but cannot feel the music. They're boring to watch. They don't evoke any emotion in you. They're just boring. They're perfect, but they're boring. So this would be the same. So starting to understand how each of those foundational pieces, they enhance each other. If you leave one out, the others are kind of don't work as well.
I look at it, you know, from the lens of more fighting, which you have a background in that as well, tremendous background.
Yeah, martial arts, yes.
And, you know, if you don't have the ability to grapple and take someone down and you're only relying on striking, then people are going to be able to block your strikes and everything else. But all of a sudden, when you add that threat of the takedown, now all of a sudden they have something else to focus on, and now your strikes become even more effective. And vice versa. If all you do is try and take someone down, and, you know, they're just going to be looking for that, but when they know, oh, they also can strike, now they have a bit of an issue because they're like, oh, I'm dealing with strikes, and then you have more availability to take them down.
So what we're saying is to become a masterful lover is to understand all of those elements and to become really skilled at that. So the amount of times that self-regulation has been crucial to shifting a sexual experience that was not going so well or was kind of something weird was going on into something extraordinary had to do with regulating myself, opening myself up, and bringing that felt state into the experience.
Goodness, I almost feel that this should have been on that first half there, since we haven't really got quite into the how. So let's jump into the how, though. How do we start to do this? To join us for the complete and explicit version of the podcast, simply upgrade your membership and gain instant access.